Welcome to Office Hours by Triple X Church. I'm your host, Carl Thomas. I'm a pastor, certified neurohealth coach, and a guy who frankly struggled with a lot of the stuff we are going to be talking about today for over 20 years until I found freedom about a decade ago. Back with me, thank goodness, is our producer and my good friend Neil, who works with the ministry in a variety of capacities. In today's episode, we are going to be jumping in and answering some really interesting questions, such as, what can I do if I really enjoy forbidden sex and the thrill that creates? How do I deal with my husband when I catch him checking out another woman? Are things like sexy lingerie, spicy talk, and striptease okay as part of foreplay and sex in a marital situation? And can a person who's really a Christian struggle with porn and masturbation? That's just some of what we will be discussing today, so make sure you hang in there and jump into these topics with us. Recognize that no questions are off the table, and I'm going to be honest and blunt with my answers, so please don't get offended. We can agree to disagree. So, without any further delay, let's jump in.
All right.
That being said, Neil, before we start, how you feeling, man?
Man, doesn't it look like I'm feeling great? I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I like the I like the neck apparatus. I think that's I don't know if that style's come up to New Jersey yet.
It'll
but
be.
When it does, I'll make sure I'm in line.
Yeah,
to buy
eventually
it.
it'll be your John, so it'll be okay.
Yeah, it's very slick. I like it. So, but you're feeling okay. You're going to be able to hang with us.
Yeah, we'll see, won't we?
Okay. Well, if you pass out, I have the notes,
right.
so I can
That's
always
always
jump
good.
in. But hopefully that
Right.
won't happen. All right. So what do we got,
All
man?
right, let's start with question number 1. Forbidden sex is more fun for me. I realize that this is not healthy, but what can I do?
Okay, so this one is it's funny how many of the questions we get. I feel like I have to say, hey, I think we're kind of asking sort of the wrong question, right? Because listen, some people like being dangerous. I get it, and let's not put sex in its own category, okay? There's a lot of people that are thrill seekers, right? We don't chastise somebody who's a skateboarder who likes to do dangerous jumps. I mean, I don't do that. That's not my thing. But some people like thrills, right? It fires up their brain. It gets them excited. So obviously, when it comes to sex or what we would call dangerous sexual situations, maybe public sex, whatever, sex that is considered forbidden or taboo. So if you come from a Christian background, let's be honest, premarital sex is not in theory, but premarital sex is taboo or forbidden. So I don't know what he means by forbidden sex, but basically the real question isn't, or the real issue isn't the fact that you kind of, let's just say, get off on the danger factor or the forbidden factor. The real question is, why do you need to get off on that when it comes to sex? Right? Why isn't sex fulfilling enough without all that? Right? Now, this person didn't say they're married. If they're not married, then obviously the next question is, well, why are you having sex in the first place, buddy? Or why are you looking at porn in the first place? That's a whole different topic. But let's just assume the person is married or they are in a committed relationship. And we're not talking about porn here, but we're talking about sexual situations that the average person in society would look at and say, well, that's a little weird. Again, the good question or the better question here is, why do you need that, right? Why isn't sex just fulfilling enough? Why do you have to add the danger element to it? For me, I would say that's something you need to explore. That's something you need to look into, maybe with a counselor, because realistically, when you look, and granted, I'm coming from a biblical perspective in this case, but when you look at the way God talks about sex in the Bible, there's no mention of, hey, let's make sure it's dangerous. And, that's not the purpose of sex. The purpose of sex is to bring us closer with our spouse, right? To build that physical intimacy. That's the purpose of sex. It's not, just to orgasm. Or just to orgasm with the most intense high possible. That's not the purpose of sex. Now, I'm not saying sex should be boring. I get that, right? But why do you need to make it this thing versus just enjoying it for what it was meant to be in the first place? And so ultimately, I can't tell you what to do about that other than I dig into it, right? Maybe a counselor or something. But there's something there if you need to have that danger element to make sex worthwhile, right?
Absolutely. I think he pretty much answered or began the answer to his own question by saying, I realize that this is not healthy. So if you realize that, why
Yeah.
not dig deeper and figure out, okay, what am I looking for? What am I searching for and why?
Yeah,
There you go.
exactly. I think that's a good point. It's kind of the same thing as saying, hey, I realize it's not healthy to get blitz drunk, but it's kind of fun. What do I do? Well, I understand it might be kind of fun, but it's also terribly unhealthy for you. So sometimes you pass up on these things that offer a temporary high because they're going to create real problems for you. So that's a good point, Neil.
All right. Number 2, my husband has looked at porn and done chat for 21 years and now claims that he's healed. When he looks at other women momentarily, he does look away, but swears he didn't. What should I do? I'm lost.
So I'm going to, full disclosure here, woman's asking this question, obviously. And when I was looking over some of the notes you sent me before we got on, I saw this topic and I said, you know what, let me run this by my wife. Let me run my answer by my wife. Because I don't want to be that callous man that is completely blind to what a woman's perspective would be, right? So I ran this by my wife. Again, full disclosure, she agreed with most of what I said. She didn't like one thing about what I said, and I'll tell you what that is. But couple things here, all right? First, this is sort of a two-part question. Hey, my husband struggled with porn, masturbation, chat rooms, says he's recovered, but the way she phrases that question definitely seems to imply that she has a question, like she's not sure about that, right? Like he says he is, but I don't know he is. So that's part one. Hey, is my husband really better in this area, or is he just kind of pulling the wool over my eyes, right? Part number two to that question is, hey, my wife's noticing a woman. Now, she does say looks away right away, right? But then he denies the fact that he did so. So, two parts. At the end of the day, I'd say both of these come down to the same root issue, which is trust and honesty, right? If your husband says he's recovered, he doesn't deal with this stuff anymore, but you have cause to doubt that, you guys need to have that conversation because something isn't right there, right? You're afraid he's not being honest, which means you don't trust him, but maybe something about his behavior is what's signaling you to have that level of distrust, right? So that's the first thing. And I would say this can get a little sticky because you have to have your husband kind of on board with this, but hey, maybe ask him, who's your accountability partner? What are you doing? Are you going to group? How's that? Maybe he and his accountability partner are willing to talk to you. I'm not saying that's always the best way, but I had a guy who, he wasn't an accountability partner per se, but he was in a group that I led at one point. And he asked me, he said, hey, look, my wife's not sure if I'm really showing up to group. Do you mind if I give her your email to check with you? And I told him the same thing. I said, bro, you got to work on the trust issue here. But if it's going to help your situation as you have this conversation, sure. And she emailed me, and I emailed her back and said, yeah, he's showing up every week. He's doing great, as far as I can tell. So maybe that's something you can do there to make you feel better about the fact that, yes, your husband really did go through this recovery process, is going through this recovery process, is staying accountable, is staying on point. Maybe that's going to help you. The second thing is, and this is where my wife disagreed because of the word I chose, but once I explained it, she understood what I was saying. And this is gonna sound hard, okay? And I went through this with my wife one time. So, and I even brought that up to her when we were talking. And this is years ago, but there are attractive people out there, okay? Just because your husband looks and notices that a woman is attractive does not mean that he's lusting after her, does not mean that he's contemplating adultery, does not mean he's going to go run into porn, doesn't mean anything. It just means that something registered that, hey, that woman looks attractive. And I don't believe there's anything wrong or sinful about acknowledging that someone might be attractive. Now, I did this years ago. I looked at a girl walking down the street, and my wife caught me, and she wasn't happy. But, we talked that through. And the reality was, no, I wasn't doing anything other than noticing. And she was coming from a place of, and this is the word she hated me using, but it's the only word I can think of, insecurity, in the fact that, hey, am I not good enough? Am I not attractive enough? Why is he looking over there? And I explained, I said, hey, be secure in who you are and the fact that you are beautiful and you are enough for me. And just because maybe I noticed someone else is attractive doesn't take away anything about how I feel about you or the fact that you're enough for me or any of that, right? So there's that. But the red flag here is the fact that when you catch him, yes, he doesn't keep looking, which I would say is a good thing, right? He's not leering at her. He's not doing anything kind of unseemly, but he's denying it. So that's an issue. Like, why are you denying it? Why can't he be honest about that with you? Which, of course, if he's lying about the little things, might, that might contribute to the fact that you're now questioning him on the bigger things, right? I mean, if I can't be honest about a casual look, how the heck am I going to be honest about my porn use, right? And that might be going through your head. So I would say the big issue here is the honesty and trust. You guys got to have more conversations about this. You need to dialogue and make sure that you guys are working on building that honesty trust factor, because that's going to make a lot of this a lot easier to navigate. Just give you a quick example. Back when I was addicted, or even freshly, like within a year or two after, let's just say, finding freedom. My wife, when we would watch shows or things like that, if something came on the screen, I would look away out of respect for her, right? But she might say something like, oh, you could just fast forward through this or whatever. 10 years later, sometimes we're watching shows and something will come on and she'll say something about, like, can you believe how big those women's boobs are? And I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing, right? Right, but the point is, the reason she feels free enough to do that is because there's a high level of trust between us.
Yeah.
She knows, like, in her heart, that just because I point out big boobs to Carl doesn't mean that now he's going to be lusting after that, he's going to be thinking about that, he's going to run off to his computer and jack off, right? She knows that's not the case. There's a really high level of trust there, which allows for really healthy conversations between the two of us when it comes to this stuff. So I would say, for you, focus on the trust and honesty. And if you can get that nailed, which it's a process, it takes time for sure, but if you start getting that nailed, a lot of this other stuff is going to be so much easier to talk through and navigate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My wife and I had to work on our communication skills in order to get past the same issue. And my wife's kind of like yours. She'll comment on somebody on TV, and I'm like, what'd you say? But it's okay because we trust each other. We know what's going on, and we know where each other is because we communicate. So, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Number 3. Is it allowed that Christian or born-again Messianic Jews, our Jewish wife, wear sexy lingerie or perform a striptease to please her husband as a part of sex and foreplay?
Okay. So this one might get me in hot water.
Probably.
And I will tell you, we are free to disagree, okay? But I would say that in the context of marriage, striptease or sexy lingerie or all sorts of things, if they make your experience better as a couple, I don't see a problem with it. Now, there's a little bit of a caveat here, okay? There's a few things you need to run through on your checklist before you just get to say, oh, I got the thumbs up and go for it. first of all, is what the two of you enjoy is, well, let's just say it. Is it immoral? Like, is there a problem with it, right? If your wife comes to you and says, hey, I'd like to bring my sister in the bedroom. Well, that's an issue, right? Even if you're both fine with it, that's an issue, right? Because now you're bringing in another sexual partner in a marriage, and that's clearly not cool. So that's the thing, right? Or, hey, maybe we should watch a little porn together tonight. No, what are you doing? You're bringing outside sexual imagery into the bedroom when it's supposed to be just the two of you. But let's just say the thing that you're talking about, striptease, or no, let's say lingerie. Not specifically, as far as I know, forbidden in the Bible. There's nothing in the Bible that says, thou shalt not wear a teddy to bed, right? But if you're the husband and let's just say you're asking your wife to wear one and it makes her feel uncomfortable and awkward and whatever, like, no, you don't go there, because the point of sex is to bring you guys together to build intimacy, not to make one of you feel awkward or humiliated or anything like that. Same thing with, not going to be graphic here, but certain forms of sex, right? If what you're doing actually physically hurts the person, not cool. Again, yeah, you don't do it, right? Because you're hurting somebody. Right. You're not putting their needs above yours. You're ruining the whole purpose of sex in the first place. But hey, if it's not something that the Bible says don't do, if it's not bringing other influences into the marriage outside the two of you, if it's not humiliating one of you, if it's not hurting one of you, my opinion, go for it, right? But you got to have that talk. And one thing here, because I think we had this conversation maybe a couple episodes ago. What if your wife's the type of person that always wants the lights off because she feels awkward about her body? Well, for now, yeah, lights off. Yeah. That doesn't mean you don't pursue those conversations to explore the idea of, hey, babe, why do you feel like you need to have the lights off? Why do you not have enough confidence in the fact that I love you for who you are and I enjoy seeing you naked? You need to have those talks. You don't just stop there, right? But in the moment, right as of today, if what you're talking about makes one of you feel a little squirrely or puts you in some sort of state of pain, yeah, you need to stay away.
Yeah,
That's all I got.
Great answer. Number 5, is it sin to say the words boobs or booty between husband and wife during marital sex as part of foreplay? Don't laugh at the way I said that.
No, that's a great question. Gosh, it sounds like it came from the person that asked the previous question. It's funny how we sometimes get these themes, but I'm just going to defer back to what I already said, right? If you're having sex with your wife and and you enjoy saying, hey, let me grab your booty, and she's okay with that, I don't see a problem with that, okay? Now, if the language goes down a road where it becomes really disgusting or unwholesome or something like that, yeah, of course, you stay away from it, right? That doesn't mean that okay, hey, while we're having sex, I'm going to talk to you like this and that and say things that are horribly humiliating and painful because, hey, we're just role playing, we're having a good time. No, right? You got to show your wife respect while you're having sex, right? But a little spicy talk, we'll call it that. I don't see a problem with that as long as it doesn't go too far across the line. And again, the guideline is it humiliating? Is it painful? Is it showing love and respect or not? If it can't pass those tests, then stay away, right? But I don't think there's any verse or any commandment of thou shalt not have spicy pillow talk, right? That's just not in the Bible. So let's not add rules and laws where they don't exist.
Don't we do that a lot? I'm just saying. All right.
All the time.
All right, number 4. Hello, I've struggled with porn and masturbation since I was 10 years old. I'm now 41. How can someone who's a believer be a slave to sexual immorality as I am? Also, my wife does know about my addiction, but if she found out just how much I watch pornography, she would most definitely leave me. What can I do?
Okay, so this is a two-part question. First, can I, as a genuine, I'll put that in air quotes, Christian, struggle with porn and masturbation? Well, I don't know what your definition of a genuine Christian is, but from my definition, you have a faith in Jesus, you have a relationship with Jesus, you're following him, you're not just signing the dotted line for fire insurance, right? Can you struggle with porn and masturbation? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can do all sorts of things. It doesn't mean, when I say you can, I don't mean you have the permission to. I'm saying that, hey, just because we have Jesus doesn't mean that we don't have the capacity to sin anymore or the capacity to make really boneheaded decisions. We're still flawed human beings. That is why we need Jesus, because God knows that we're still going to screw up. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't do the things you need to do to try to get better, to try to avoid this stuff, right? You don't say, well, I struggle with porn and masturbation, but Carl said I can as long as I'm a Christian, so I'm cool. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, yes, you can be a Christian and struggle with this stuff. That doesn't mean it's still not on you to seek healing and restoration and try to get better, right? That doesn't mean you don't go counseling. That doesn't mean you don't join a group or a community to start talking about this stuff. That doesn't mean you don't need to be accountable about it. It doesn't mean it's not wrong. It just means that, yes, you can still be a Christian to deal with this stuff. Because if that was the case, if the opposite was the case, we'd all be pretty screwed, including me, right? Second part of this question, hey, my wife knows that I have a porn addiction, but if she knew how deep it went or how extensive it went, she would never leave me. Now, he's not giving us any details in terms of what that means, and to be honest, I'm kind of glad because I don't know. But let's just assume the best and say, hey, what he means is if she knew I was looking at it every day instead of once a month or something like that. Okay, we'll just assume that. I'll say first, hey, it's great that there's some awareness there and that she understands that you have a struggle in this area and that it sounds like you've talked about it on some level. However, the second part to that is, but it also sounds like you're not being completely honest about what you're dealing with, right? So you're giving her half the information, and that's not good, all right? I can speak from experience. You know, when I was kind of in the later stages of my recovery, I would not tell my wife all the details. And she'd say, hey, how you doing? And I might have looked at porn yesterday and I'd say, I'm doing okay. Just keep it vague. And that would prove to be very painful for her when she found out that I wasn't doing okay or my definition of okay didn't match with her definition of okay. There's something called full disclosure that you hear about in the counseling, especially the marital counseling, sexual betrayal counseling world, right? Where the idea is you come to her and you tell her everything. And there's a process for that. That's not something you just go at by, like, there's a process for that. There's guidance for that on how to do this in a healthy way. So it's not like just ripping off the Band-Aid and letting the blood spurt. But if you're afraid that she might leave you just because you're being honest, I hate to tell you this, but that's not really a good reason, because what you're in essence saying is that your marriage is built on lies. Hey, we're happily married as long as she doesn't know the real me, and that's not good for either of you. And listen, I don't think, I could be wrong, and don't take my advice and then you get a divorce and you send me a nasty letter. I'm just saying, for me personally, and from other experts I've talked to and deal with, honesty has to be part of a focal point of the relationship. There needs to be transparency there. And there is going to be pain, and there is going to be fallout, and there are going to be consequences. But you move through that, especially if you get a counselor involved, you're going to be so much better off in the long run. Because now, use the wound example, right? Now you've opened up, you've pulled away the bandage, you've exposed the wound, and now you can really go about the work of healing it. But if you just keep throwing dirty bandage on dirty bandage on dirty bandage, you're never going to get to the wound, and it's always going to be an issue on some level. Maybe you'll have a situation like we talked about earlier in this episode where the woman saying, hey, my husband says he's fixed, but I don't know if he is, right? There's a lack of trust there, and that only happens when your wife knows, hey, this guy, he's honest with me. He might be flawed. He might be making mistakes. He might be trying to figure it out how, as he goes, but he's honest. And I can trust that. And I can trust, because I can trust his honesty with me, I can also trust him when he says, hey, I'm committed to this thing and I'm working on it and I'm doing these things to get better so I can be the best husband I can be. You got to be honest, man. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, that's all we got. That's it.
All right, cool. Well, hey, I'm not going to argue. I have a fantasy draft tonight with my son,
Nice.
and we have to go through our strategies. We're kind of geeks
you
on
are.
that. Not that we've either won. We've both made, in 2 different leagues, we've both made the finals, but we both lost. So neither of us have ever won our league, so maybe this is a year for one of us. He's actually a rival in this league. It's him versus me and 8 other people. In another league, we're actually co-managers, so I like that better because then we're not trying to screw each other over with our draft picks.
But hey, you're having a good time together.
But anyway,
so.
yeah, good fantasy fun tonight, fantasy football fun tonight, and yeah, so I can get to that sooner. So great stuff. Thanks, Neil. Dude, keep working on the recovery. Hope you feel better. Maybe next week you won't have that extra fashion piece with you. I don't know. But before we go, hey, if you're listening, please, especially if you're watching on YouTube, give us your questions. Leave your comments. Let us know. If we didn't answer something or if you don't like something, let us know. We'll either get back to you or you can go to xxchurch.com/office-hours yourself, submit your own question, and I assure you that we will answer it in an upcoming episode. So that's it, folks. Have a great weekend.
Take care.